and every one of us who earns an income pays our fair tax burden, so that we fairly share our tax burden and not overload some, as the case has been in the past, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, I do believe, Honorable Speaker, with the enactment of this bill, it's a very short bill, Honorable Speaker, only about 10 clauses, and Honorable Speaker, it is a very progressive bill that will help not just the Kenya Revenue Authority, but more importantly, our business people and taxpayers. And that is why it speaks to procedures, tax procedures, because I know there are those who may want the world to believe that we are debating taxation, and probably we are not very many in the House, Honorable Speaker. Even in the US Congress, even in the UK Parliament, some of these things are not discussed by a full plenary, Honorable Speaker. It is those people like Honorable Nyikal who are keen on legislating, who are usually in the House. And you know, Honorable Nyikal is always in the House. And I was just sharing with him here and telling him, you know, some of these are a little bit complex issues to do with finance, economics. There's not very many members who are keen on them. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, these bills are not just debated in plenary. The committees that have considered all these bills, the Committee on Public Finance, on Finance and National Planning, has membership that has considered that. Honorable Speaker, I've seen other committees, especially on the business laws, the Committee on Trade, and the Vice Chair, Honorable Mariani is here, she can attest to it, that the number of members of this House who have interacted with these bills are immense. Therefore, the fact that at the rise of the House, Honorable Speaker, you are about 80 of you in a House of 349 doesn't mean members have not interacted with these bills. Members have. And Honorable Nyikal knows, because I have interacted with Honorable Nyikal at the tea place, at the members' lounge. Members carry out even more detailed debate on bills outside this chamber than inside this chamber. A fact of life. Because I was in a very animated engagement just before I came in with members at the members' lounge having tea. And many who may have misconstrued what this is contained in this bill, Honorable Speaker, got to understand from that engagement. And I was impressed that members have taken their time, taken keen interest. And I do urge those of us who are here to support this bill. It's not a very detailed bill, only 10 clauses. And that is why there is nothing much more to add, Honorable Speaker. So that, Honorable Speaker, as without anticipating debate, Honorable Speaker, the next bill on business laws is also very critical and crucial for us, and in a way interrelated, because these business laws are also speaking to how we help businesses to grow, how we encourage businesses to invest in this country, how we make the running of business in this country more efficient, and investors who want to come and invest in our country. Can I second? Investors who want to come to invest in our country to have a conducive environment through the business laws that we'll be following, Honorable Speaker, and therefore urge that we support this bill, as I second and urge all of you to support it, and we move on to the other bills. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I second.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Honorable members, I now propose the question that Tax Procedures Amendment Number 2 Bill, National Assembly Bill Number 46 of 2024 be read a second time. The Honorable Rindikiri Mugambi, Member for Buri. Honorable Sabina Chege, I'll give you a chance. Please,
thank you.
Let us start with
Madam
the Honorable Member for Buri.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. I like to support this bill because, Madam Speaker, payment of tax is everybody's obligation in this country, and because we finance our activities through the tax that is paid, there is all importance to ensure that we have an effective, efficient system of tax collection and the entire tax administration. Madam Speaker, this bill, just like it has been articulated by the mover, a tax invoice in many cases is required to have legal and compliance standards when matters of tax reporting is concerned. And that's what Clause 2 is seeking or trying to clarify. Madam Speaker, I once received an invoice of payment of tax, but don't contain references or even the office that this invoice emanated from. I was left to go to KRA, and for 3 days, I could not trace the origin of this invoice. Madam Speaker, this bill addresses that requirement that we need to have an electronic tax invoice that clarifies the content, including the details of the payer, where it is coming from, the information of the transaction, and even sometimes on e-signatures of where that bill that invoice has originated from. Madam Speaker, this bill is very important because it's going to make it easier for the taxpayers to understand what is contained and what is it that they are paying and for what period. Madam Speaker, Clause 2 addresses the issue of amnesty. Madam Speaker, why do we need tax amnesty? Madam Speaker, we know these hard times. There is natural calamities that can cause one not to pay tax. There is even what we call transition of business from one to the other, relocations, etc. In many cases, you find that the taxpayer is not to meet the tax obligations in good time. And for this reason, Madam Speaker, it is very important that the tax procedure is able to address the inconveniences that are caused in terms of payment of their taxes. Madam Speaker, we have seen so many people who have, even for whatever reason, are not able to pay tax because of sickness or even injury. And amnesty is very important. And therefore, I agree that an extension of this amnesty is very valid, it's very important, and you need to support. There is the element of tax relief. Madam Speaker, you find in many cases there is conflict or doubt or even difficulties in the tax recovery. One complication that I have come across, Madam Speaker, is the issue of disability of the taxpayer, death, where you find somebody who has been learning business or even employed, passes on, and he has left tax liabilities. And he or she is not able to pay that because, the inheritance are not able to pay that tax. So because of that, there is need to have a tax relief framework that will enable such cases to be looked at and to enable either total forgiveness on paying of tax or the tax relief is granted according to a legal framework. Madam Speaker, the 10% penalty of failure to limit tax, to me, I think it is very important. Madam Speaker, this bill addresses the cost-effective collection of taxes, Madam Speaker. There are in many cases, Madam Speaker, you find we are not able to be where everybody is. And this bill intends now to synchronize all the electronic document into one system together with the iTax for the purpose of submission of electronic document. I think everybody is going online. Madam Speaker, I went to South Africa and I bought a few items, and when I reached at the airport, I went to launch tax refund. And they were asking so many questions. I think in Kenya here we need to have that kind of, and I think this is what this bill is addressing. Because strictly speaking, what everybody is looking at is how can we collect tax with ease? How Kenyans will be able to understand the methods and requirement of any tax that they are paying. So this bill, Madam Speaker, is really coming handy. Madam Speaker, we find that there are some situations where we need to address the issue of how do period that is required for computation of tax liabilities. I've seen the Saturdays and Sundays and public audits, yes, but I think I'll ask the mover to also look at a situation where somebody is disposed of because of sickness or injury. Madam Speaker, this is not addressed because that time that person is disabled from engaging into meaningful activities or to do certain things, that time, and that person can prove that he was not able to do his activities. I think this time needs also to be included there, not only the Saturdays and Sunday. Madam Speaker, I was given a tax liability of something that I did not cause. I ran a company, and instead of this putting the payment on the company's account, they put it in my account as using my PIN. They did not use the company's PIN. I didn't know until when I went for tax compliance. I was told I owe Kenya Revenue Authority 880,000 in terms of penalties and drained payments. Madam Speaker, this bill is addressing that. I was a self-employed person, and it took a lot of time for me to convince these people that I did not do it intentionally. Madam Speaker, with those few remarks, I say this bill is coming the right time, because tax payment is very crucial in our economy. We don't need to make things difficult. We need to simplify for everybody to understand, and we need the public education on the ways taxes are paid in this country. It is only the educated, like Dr. Makali, who understands this. We need to get this information to the village. And once people discover that paying tax is easy, it will not be difficult for them now to start even understanding the payment and the importance of tax. Madam Speaker, with those few remarks, I support.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ndikiri. The Honorable Andrew Okwome, member for Karachonyo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity. Now, I support the bill. Let me just say that from the beginning. Madam Speaker, our citizens have had a lot of problems with payment of tax. And I think much of it probably was because of the procedure that was being adopted for payment of tax. This bill is trying to address the issue, and that's why I support it. I know of cases where the taxpayers have been offended. He's running a small business, maybe a restaurant, and a tax person comes, sits inside the restaurant, trying to see how many people are coming in, eating and probably eating what. And then that intruder, I would call him, comes up with what he believes is the income the person has got and uses that for taxing the person according to the report he sends to the tax authority. This procedure will avoid that. The system we must have, and which is being reflected here, is a system which is understandable by both sides, the tax collector's side and also the taxpayer side. It should not be a system that's not reflecting human face in terms of operation. I believe this bill is going to get us out of that past. I know, and everybody agrees, that we must pay taxes in order that the government can have revenue that they can use for running the nation. And I tend to believe while we are doing this, we should also look at the capacity of the taxpayer. And that's why I was talking of human face collection of taxes. When somebody is not having his own revenue to pay immediately, the tax person or the tax authority should give time for payment of this and even stagger the payment through installment method. This will leave the taxpayer with a capacity to continue with the business and pay tax even for the future. But if we try to descend upon the taxpayer with heaviness of authority, we may be killing the goose that lays the egg. I support this bill. The procedure is useful. The knowledge people should have on what they are to pay, when and by what time at the limit. All those put together in the act as we are trying to do is useful. Madam Speaker, I support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Sabina Chege, nominated member.
Thank you, Madam.
And whip for Jubilee Party.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, for Jubilee Party, just in case you didn't know. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And just to let you know that the Speaker is also a member of Jubilee Party, so we are third largest party in this House. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I will stand to support the Tax Procedures Amendment Bill number 2 of 2024. Madam Speaker, mine are going to be a few highlights here and there. First and foremost, Madam Speaker, to say I want to really commend the Treasury for reaching out to the public to find out what they really want from the payment of taxes. And I want to say that, Madam Speaker, if Kenyans committed in remitting taxes on time, at the end we might not even be able to add more taxes, and we can be able to survive with what we have. Madam Speaker, also when this bill addresses the shortcuts that people look for, and now there's clarity, there are clear guidelines on what to do, by what time, the issue of amnesty, the issue of penalties, the issue of the timelines. This is very important, Madam Speaker, so that the people who are either in business and they would want to seek for amnesty, or they would want even to write to the commissioner in case of many things that the colleagues have said, whether it's a holiday, whether it's somebody who is indisposed, and I'm in support of the honorable member who said sometimes somebody can fall sick And in that case, Madam Speaker, then they are not able to remit their taxes. There should be a provision of that case, Madam Speaker. And I want to say taxes are not liked. And even in the Bible, I remember the tax collectors were not really loved. But it's also in the Bible that we are told you give to the Caesar what belongs to Caesar and to God what belongs to God. And so once we have clarity on how to pay the taxes, Madam Speaker, we will be able to collect more and not harass people. And at the same time, Madam Speaker, I also pray that whatever is paid or collected from the people, that it goes to the right use. I want to go to Section 5, Madam Speaker, where the Section 5 seeks to amend Section 42 of the Principal Act. And this is where it says a person who is required under this section to withhold tax and without reasonable cause fails to withhold the whole amount of the tax which should have been withheld, or fails to remit the amount of the withheld tax to the Commissioner by the 5th working days after the deduction was made, shall be liable to penalty of 10% of the amount not withheld or remitted. So, Madam Speaker, we know there are some tax collectors who actually go and start harassing people and saying, if I give you, give me this, I may be able to give you this back. But when we have that clarity that is a percentage of 10%, then individuals will know, and the number of days are given by the 5th working day after the deduction was made. It is important that, Madam Speaker, that the people who are meant to remit, they remit the same. And there is also the issue about the refund of the overpaid tax, which is in Section Clause 6, which is amending Section 47, by saying for a refund of tax overpaid in case of an income tax within 5 years from the date on which the tax was overpaid, or in case of any other tax within 6 months from the date of which the tax was overpaid. Madam Speaker, the issue of electronic and reducing the human contact, because sometimes when there's a lot of human contact, we have seen not only in taxes, even in collection of the parking fee. Remember, Madam Speaker, the days that you would go park your car in town and somebody hides just to wait for you to look for him, and maybe you're in a hurry, you're going to an office, then they come back and clamp your car so that then you can be able to cough something out. So the issue of removal of human interaction with technology is commendable. And Madam Speaker, all that I hope is that also with technology, there are also loopholes that comes in. We hope then that they will also be able to secure that the tax money that is collected will not disappear. You know, also electronic has also its own challenges, Madam Speaker. The last one I want to comment about, which I really recommend, and this is very important for the taxpayers, is about the transaction for which a PIN is required, and why every Kenyan, especially who is of age, need a PIN. And it is important that people know if you want to register a title or a stamping of instruments, you require a PIN. There's approval of development plans for anybody who wants to build, and payment of water deposit. You can imagine how many Kenyans pay water. It is important for Kenyans to know that the first schedule, it's giving clarity on transaction on which a PIN will be required. There's the issue of registration of a motor vehicle, transfer of motor vehicle and licensing of motor vehicles, registration of business names, registration of companies. And this also now addresses, Madam Speaker, I think 2 days or last week we had the issue of the startups, where we're also encouraging our young people to come up with startups, and we're coming up with how they can be able to be assisted. So it is important for even our young people to know that they require this PIN, so that as you register your business name, you will have a PIN, registration of companies, underwriting of insurances, trading license, importation of goods and custom clearing and forwarding, payment of deposits from power connections. It's very important, or contracts for the supply of goods and services to government ministries and public bodies. And remember, this house also provided for a specific percentage, that is 30%, to be given to our young people and the women in this country. Issues of opening account with financial institution, whether it's a bank or an investment bank, that you require to have a PIN, registration, and renewal of membership by professional bodies and licensing agencies. That means if you would want to register as an engineer and as a nurse, any professional body, that you require to have a PIN. Number 13 is interesting because there's registration of mobile cellular pay bill and till numbers by telecommunication operators, carrying out business over the internet or electronic network, and registration of a trust. So, Madam Speaker, we say lack of knowledge is what really makes people suffer. And so it is important that we provide this knowledge, and I'm commending Treasury for the same. And I hope once we become very clear, once we educate the public on the taxes and what is required on them, the public will have no issue once they know what is required and the timelines. So, Madam Speaker, I support the Tax Procedures Amendment Bill number 2 of 2024, and commend even the committee, the Treasury, and even this House for the commitment. And just to say, Madam Speaker, there's a lot of politics going on, but what is really happening in this House? A few weeks ago, yesterday we dealt with coffee, and these are the most important things that we have been sent by our representative to come and do this in this House. So I want even to commend my colleagues who are here this morning to make sure that we do what we were called to do for the nation. I thank you for the opportunity, and I support.
Thank you very much, Sabina Chege. The Honorable Dr. Makali Mulu, member for Kitui Central.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity. Honorable Speaker, I want to join my colleagues in appreciating the work which has gone into preparation of this bill, all the way from Treasury and to our own Committee on Finance and Planning. Honorable Speaker, the bill we are discussing is what we call the Tax Procedures Bill Amendment. And this basically, what it entails is making the procedures of tax payment simple, clear, and we ensure that we have no ambiguity. So an attempt towards improving the way taxes are processed in this country, Honorable Speaker, should be supported. And on that note, I do support. Because once we get this right, Honorable Speaker, it will be very easy for this country to collect taxes, and more taxes. And I've said many times, Honorable Speaker, a taxpayer is like a milk cow. If you feed it well, it gives you a lot of milk. If you don't feed it, you don't get any milk from it. So the way you treat a taxpayer, Honorable Speaker, will determine how much taxes they will pay. So in a situation where you make it very simple that a taxpayer knows how much is expected to be paid, a taxpayer knows how much the penalty is if you pay late, a taxpayer knows the procedures for refund in case there's an overpayment, that makes it very easy for the taxpayer to continue paying without complaining, Honorable Speaker. So I just want to pick about 3 items in this bill, which I think are critical and which need to be supported so that we are able to collect more taxes. The first one, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of where you have overpaid and you need to be refunded. Honorable Speaker, that matter is very important. And I really agree that it should be done in time, in good time. And I was just asking myself, Honorable Speaker, in a situation where then Treasury delays the refund, would the taxpayer be demanding too much that even as they refund, they are also charged a tax to it, some interest to it? The same way Treasury will tax a penalty, it will reimburse a penalty where there is delay in payment. I think that will then smoothen the process. The other matter which is important, Honorable Speaker, some of the delay in refunding is a result of there being no resources which are ready to refund the taxpayer when there is an overpayment. And I think as a country, we need to start thinking in the long run, can we have established what we call a tax refund fund, so that we have a fund, so that when you are due for refund, we don't start looking for the money that time. That will be critical, Honorable Speaker. The other matter, Honorable Speaker, which is important, is a delay in payment. And Honorable Speaker, what is happening in this country, for example, the VAT, we seriously need to think about what to do. Because the reason why many Kenyans are delaying repayment is because the people who are benefiting from the goods and services have not paid. For example, the government itself, look at the level of pending bills, Honorable Speaker. In a situation where we have pending bills to the tune of 600 billion, how would you expect somebody to pay VAT when they have not been paid? So we need to make sure that we are aligned, that we pay bills in time, and then we'll be able to collect money in time. Another thing, Honorable Speaker, amnesty is very important in any tax regime, in tax arrangement. But also, amnesty cannot be perpetual, Honorable Speaker, that is forever. So even as we discuss about amnesty, and that's why I agree that we need to have a fixed date when people should be able to clear. Otherwise, if you leave it open, then you actually collect less because we will never pay taxes in good time. And you know the way we prepare the taxes and the tax proposal, Honorable Speaker, they are also time bound. For example, you say in this year we'll be able to collect this. So if you are not able to have it time bound, it means you'll be collecting even later after the time is gone, and then you cannot project well what you are likely to be collecting, Honorable Speaker. The other matter which is important, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of withholding tax. You know, Honorable Speaker, anytime you do some work, for example, consultancy, people will deduct the money from your money, and then you find that some companies and some organizations will not even remit that money to KRA. And a year or two later, you see getting a tax demand that you were not able, that money was not remitted, so you pay. So I think this penalty of 10%, Honorable Speaker, I support it. So that if you are a person who has been authorized to collect withholding tax, you should be able to remit it to Treasury in good time, so that you don't have you don't really harass the person who you have deducted the money from. My last point, Honorable Speaker, is this issue of the PIN. Honorable Speaker, you know it's good. We are saying we want to introduce the idea of PIN for Kenyans who are working remotely, people who are working remotely for a Kenyan company. That is very good. But also, I think we need a bit of clarity on this, and I wish the Finance Committee will be able to provide more clarity on this matter, because we could easily also, Honorable Speaker, punish Kenyans people who are out there, foreigners, who would want also to work for Kenyan companies. So that that matter becomes very clear. So that when I read that law, then I know that if I'm a foreigner and I want to work for a Kenyan company remotely, what are my tax demands? What is required of me in terms of tax payment? If we do it that way, Honorable Speaker, then we will be doing the best thing for this country. And as you continue to speak, I think it's a learning curve. So that any tax procedure which seems to be complicated, can we on daily basis or on annual basis continue revising so that we make the whole process of taxation simple for Kenyans? We need clarity, we need simplicity, so that at the end of the day, people will know how much to pay, and we can then grow our economy. With those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Makali Molu. The Honorable Ambassador Benjamin Langat, member for Enaimoi, also speaking for the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me this opportunity to discuss this Tax Procedures Amendment Bill. Madam Chair, previously we used to have every tax law had their own procedures in terms of when to pay, how to pay, what documents to file, Madam Speaker. But over time, Madam Speaker, it was agreed that we need to harmonize all the tax procedures to come under one law, which is the Tax Procedures Act, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Tax Procedures Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 46 of 2024, actually seeks to simplify further and clarify further several tax processes, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it provides for what should electronic tax invoice contain, again for standardization, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the bill, I'm just giving a summary of what the bill provides for before I go to the details. The bill provides for extension of the tax amnesty, especially considering the last experience where, Madam Speaker, when we gave Kenyans a tax amnesty, the Kenya Revenue Authority were able to collect 43 billion shillings in taxes which had already, it was difficult to collect at that time, Madam Speaker. The bill sets a 10% penalty for VAT withholding agents. Madam Speaker, again, if you are an agent, you are collecting money, that's not your money, you are collecting on behalf of government. Then you delay or you fail to pay. Madam Speaker, you deserve to pay even more because that's not your money. You are deducting and not remitting to the KRA. Having said that, Madam Speaker, I just want to inform the House that according to our Constitution, Article 118, 1B, Parliament must facilitate public participation for all the bills that it is considering. And together with our standing orders 127.3 and 3A, requires Parliament that we must do public participation. And I want to inform the House, Madam Speaker, that we did a very extensive public participation as a committee. Madam Speaker, we did 6 counties out of Nairobi. Madam Speaker, in Western Kenya, where I led a team of some of my members, we went to Bungoma, Madam Speaker. We went I'll be giving shortly what we have discussed as a committee and what we intend to do at the relevant stage, that is the third reading. Madam Speaker. We also did a town hall meeting for the organized groups. Like the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, the Institute of Certified Public Accountants, the Law Society of Kenya, different audit firms, Madam Speaker, different tax consultancy companies, Madam Speaker, different sectors. Madam Speaker. We then proceeded and considered all those matters which have been raised by individual organizations. And I want to confirm to them here, Madam Speaker. Because when we went outside there, some Kenyans were trying to say, you are just doing an exercise. We know you have already made a decision. It's an exercise in futility, but I want to confirm that we have captured most of the views which we received from the public, including the ones we received in Nairobi, KICC, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, having said that, I already said we went to Western, and also we went to Coastal Region, Taita Taveta, Isiolo, Madam Speaker. Having said that, Madam Speaker, let me run through the main provisions of the bill, clause by clause, again for the information of the House, very briefly. Madam Speaker, Clause 2 of the bill seeks to amend the Tax Procedures Act to prescribe information to be contained by a tax invoice. Again, Madam Speaker, we said procedures must be clear. Kenyans must be sure that when they do this, it is within the law. So it provides the details which the electronic tax invoice should contain. Again, that is for clarity. Number 2. Clause 3 seeks to amend Section 7E of the Tax Procedures Act to extend the tax amnesty period from 30th June 2024 to 30th June 2025. Madam Speaker, this was a welcome move by all the stakeholders. And based on the prior experience of the immediate tax amnesty period, KRA was able to collect slightly over 40 billion, Madam Speaker, on account of this tax amnesty. Madam Speaker, tax amnesty is where we are telling Kenyans, if you have outstanding taxes and you have been given penalties and interest, then by this law we are saying we are waiving the interest, we are waiving the penalties. Please pay the principal amount of tax that is due to KRA. Madam Speaker, I have had members talk here, and I want to say this is the final call. Because again, Madam Speaker, if we keep extending the tax amnesty, it becomes the normal, it becomes the Kenyans will be used to it and no one will be paying taxes because they expect another tax amnesty maybe next year. Madam Speaker, I think as a committee we discussed and we agreed this should be the final call. Those who have not paid, please by 30th of June 2025, that is the final call. Please pay. By this law, we will waive the interest. By this law, we will waive the penalties. Please pay the principal taxes. So I have heard the members that we should not keep extending the tax amnesty. Clause 4 proposes inserting a new section, 37F, to provide a relief because of doubt or difficulty in tax recovery. Madam Speaker, this is called tax abandonment. Madam Speaker, sometimes it is not possible to collect some taxes. Maybe the taxpayer has died, maybe the taxpayer has relocated and we cannot get the local legend here, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, we need to give a procedure on how we can abandon that tax because it is not possible to collect. If somebody has died or if somebody has relocated and we cannot get a local agency here, then there should be a way of abandoning, but of course with some restrictions so that it cannot be abused, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Clause 5 of the bill proposes to amend Section 42A of the Principal Act by deleting the provisions of and inserting the new subsection to prescribe a penalty of 10% for persons who fail to be told and remit. Madam Speaker, if you are a tax agent and you have been appointed by KRA, you have withheld my money as your customer. You need to remit the money. And some people are saying, no, this is too high. Madam Speaker, it should actually be more because you are using the money that is not yours. Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, as somebody said here, Madam Speaker. Clause 6 proposes amending Section 47 to provide timelines for the application of offset for overpaid tax. Again, this bill, Madam Speaker, has for the first time allowed the taxpayers who have overpaid the taxes, Madam Speaker, to be able to claim against the outstanding taxes or future liabilities, Madam Speaker. Because, Madam Speaker, previously, you could have overpaid income tax, but then you have a refund of VAT. Madam Speaker, the procedure then was you first of all pay your income tax as you wait for your refund. Madam Speaker, we are saying if I have a VAT refund and I have overpaid income tax, why don't we net off, Madam Speaker? And we know government is difficult to refund the amount. So this bill, for the first time, we are saying if you have one tax which is overpaid and you have a refund in the other one, you net off, Madam Speaker. And we are saying for income tax, 5 years. You can claim up to 5 years. For all other taxes, the bill proposes 6 months, but we have agreed as a committee, we extend that 6 months to 12 months so that we give taxpayers enough time to be able to lodge the claims for overpaid taxes.
Let him finish. Yes. Give him more time.
Yeah, please. Madam Speaker, Clause 7 seeks to amend Section 59A to provide for the integration of electronic tax system with iTax. Madam Speaker, this is where there was a lot of contestation from the public. And the contestation is, you are telling KRA to come and integrate with your system. What about the data protection? What about the private information? Some of the people came and said, if it's an hospital and you come and connect to my system, how safe is the hospital information for your clients? Can KRA access them? Madam Speaker, some of the manufacturers said, for the manufacturing information, how safe will it be if you connect to KRA? But Madam Speaker, we will be providing a better fashion, which is a win-win, Madam Speaker, between the concerns of the public and the requirements of KRA, where we will be limiting the integration, Madam Speaker, to only financial information, because KRA is only interested in financial information. Madam Speaker, Clause 9 proposes to amend Section 83 to provide for a penalty of 20,000 shillings per month for export processing zone enterprise that fails to submit required returns. Madam Speaker, if you are operating in an export processing zone, you are enjoying a lot of tax reliefs, and you are supposed to file returns to KRA. If you fail, you are supposed to pay 20,000 per month, but in our view, this is even less. Madam Speaker, I wish to thank your office on behalf of the Finance Committee for facilitating our sittings as a committee, our travel to various counties in this republic. I've already said we traveled to 6. We divided ourselves into 2, Western Kenya, Coastal and Eastern Kenya, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank your office for supporting the committee. Madam Speaker, I want to thank my members. Let me report to you, Madam Speaker. Last night, we worked up to 1 a.m. That's why you can't even see the chairman here, because he had to sign some reports by 6 a.m. In the morning today, Madam Chair. So I want to thank the members for the very hard work, for the cooperation, and we had quorum all the time. We were able to process the reports within the shortest time possible. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I support the bill and request the members to support the bill. We shall be bringing the necessary amendments in third reading to be able to capture what we got from the public participation. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for Seme, Honourable James Nyikal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Madam Speaker, I also rise to support this bill. Because to me, the summary of this bill is we make the procedures easy, flexible, so that we can collect taxes from more people instead of increasing tax on individuals. So with that principle, Madam Speaker, I support this. And it really does bring this out very well. In clause 2, this electronic invoice, it actually gives you all the details so that whatever you want to follow up later is available for you. In clause 3, when we get small business people, we were burdening them with this thing of issuing a tax invoice. We now put it up to the purchaser. So what we are doing is really making things easy so that more people pay, so that we don't have to push individuals. If you go to clause 3, if there is an amnesty, and I like this because it is on interest. So if it's on interest, at least that, the principal is still paid. And in clause 4, you give a tax relief where you are finding it is difficult there's doubt on the tax. More often, even in court, if there is doubt, it goes to the accused. So in this case, let this doubt and difficulty benefit the taxpayer. And for that, you have to put a framework. So that is what this bill is doing. And clause 5, withholding tax. People can withhold tax. They have taken tax from you, but they're not paying it. So later on, you get taxed, and actually somebody had taken your tax and didn't pay it. And in clause 6, if you have overpaid and you also owe tax, why not just offset it? Why pay and then claim and you will never get? So I think that is really important. And in clause 7, when you are integrating the systems, I mean, it makes it easy to do things. So with that, Madam Speaker, I find that basically what we have done is makes things easier, more people pay, instead of getting a few people and push them to pay higher tax. Madam Speaker, what the previous honorable member did is why I was raising the issue of reports. Madam Speaker, let's get into the habit of getting reports earlier, because reports and committee members give insight in some technical areas which people can't follow. So it's not that we are discussing the report, but it also gives you even what the committee thinks, what the public thinks, and it helps us in the debate, particularly when later on you're thinking. And I also raised the issue of numbers. Madam Speaker, next time, when we're having a very important thing like this, let's limit the number of committees that are sitting. Because even me, I'm now rushing that I should go and attend a committee, and there's a very important task going on. Those are the two issues I was raising. Otherwise, I support this.
The Honourable Member for Dagoretti North, Honourable Beatrice Elachi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me also thank and really give thanks to the committee, to the Chair of Finance, for indeed that, as I said when we were discussing the state of address of the President, that it is now when the country is calm, is coming to a calm, Madam Speaker, and we are able now to focus and see us move ahead. And I'm hoping also citizens are now seeing that in the last few weeks in this Parliament, we've been able to try to just bring what citizens have been asking. For me, Madam Speaker, one of the things I appreciate about this bill is that the Tax Procedure Amendment Act is now simplifies. It clarifies for you several tax processes. It informs citizens on how even you can do your electronic invoices. It outlines so that it brings you out of confusion. Madam Speaker, it also eradicates corruption now, because one of the things that we have had in this tax, while Kenyans are feeling harsh, they feel we have really pushed them hard. Madam Speaker, I'll give you an example, and I hope the President will look at the cities and talk to the governors of the cities. That, Madam Speaker, in Nairobi, for example, we have someone who wakes up every morning and manages the washrooms that you see across Nairobi. Madam Speaker, when I was Speaker, one washroom in Nairobi, especially in the CBDs where there's very full, floor is so full, we have a lot of people walking in. They walk away every day with not less than 100,000. And this person does not pay tax. You can't tax him or her. But that is what they walk away. The lowest they can walk away is 50,000. That's the lowest. A person you see in Nairobi, in the city, doing your shoe shine every morning, that person, the owner of that, because there's a person doing the shoe shine and there's the owner of the tent. The owner of the tent is like a matatu guy. The same money a matatu leaves in the evening taking to their boss is the same money that guy will be taking and now paying and then goes home with something, no tax. And so as we bring in these bills to ensure the salaried, those who pay taxes in this country, can also have a cushion. It is important for those who are doing all those businesses to remember there is a person who walks around to clean that place. He's paid by the county, but you don't pay anything. There is another person who does this. You don't pay tax. Maybe you pay the county and you assume that is the tax. No. And so, Madam Speaker, it will address such things. Madam Speaker, there's one thing we need to address. And I'm hoping also they will address that one, and I think it's in GAF and NCGDF, we have our committee members. They normally come for your committee meetings. When they are coming, you are supposed to give them an allowance of transport. It's not an allowance, it's a transport to go back, or maybe accommodation, because maybe he comes from the farthest end to come to where your CDF office is, maybe in town, and so we might sleep. And we must talk to KRA to see that that is not an allowance for tax. This is not a person who works somewhere and is taxed. And so he has a salary, and so this is an allowance, he's sitting like a bodo. No, this is a person who has come from a CDF place to come and just do a meeting. He needs transport to go back. We must remove tax from that, because they will pay VAT. And I remember during Kibaki's time why he said it is so difficult to get Kenyans, all of them, onto a tax integration. The best you can do is put VAT so that everyone pays that. So let us think of that, even in this House, Madam Speaker. We appreciate, and I'm telling Kenyans, you have amnesty that is very clear. Please walk into a tax office and deal with it. The challenges sometimes we face, and that is why you find sometimes a lot of non-compliance, is also, Madam Speaker, taxpayer literacy. And we must deal with it. There must be a way KRA must bring in awareness, public participation, not public participation of our finance committee and all committees of Bunge, public participation done by KRA to just create awareness. We are giving you new laws. They must go out there to explain to Kenyans now how they can deal with these laws. Madam Speaker, if we do that, we shall end up with good compliance. But then now, as a salaried person who is also in all this, I know we have 3 good bills that are also coming to resolve some of these challenges, Madam Speaker. So for me, as Kenyans, let us have the spirit of doing what is right. Just pay tax. Don't run, don't evade. That's why we find ourselves in all these disputes. That's why you find, and also KRA, you must understand that is the Kenyan who is supposed to give you also revenue. How you handle that person is very critical. I will tell you, in the market, sometimes when you meet our KRA officers, they can be banned in a market for nothing because they come as if this man is a thief. Just come knowing very well that is a Kenyan. Every day he or she will be in a market trading, and that is where you must collect your revenue. But when you come and carry all their goods, do all the manners of things I see sometimes at 4 a.m. when women and all those who are trading in markets, Ukulima, Kawangware, you find them running all over with these KRA guys. And you ask them, what is the real problem? Because when this vehicle is coming in, already you are collecting. County is collecting. So any person will not even understand that double taxation, Madam Speaker. And those are some of the things I'm hoping now we are trying to work out, and in this procedural act amendment, we will work out all those things so that women who are the highest traders in the markets will understand. But lastly, Madam Speaker, as I finalize, I've realized of late, I don't know whether government officials fear to just stand firm and give what government is doing, because some of these things, if you feel you fear, go and take a screen. Simplify the things they need to do. Let it roll there, and people will end up in the market reading, okay, put it in Kiswahili, put it in English, let them read. They will understand what they are supposed to do. Than just this thing of, it's the same as how we are dealing even, and I know we are going to a Kamkunji, Madam Speaker, but it's the same. Information sharing, communication. I don't know how we shall say this until it enters into the nerves of all the people who are working for the president. Because they are the ones who are making us, until now we have to be in Bunge and you must do public participation as you do this. I mean, because we are wondering, where are you? There are good things, there are tough things, but where are we? But as we finalize, let us, and I want to thank the Finance Committee, we have toned down the country. They can understand there are different amendments that are coming in, and these amendments will support each Kenyan to be able to pay tax. Tax for development, not tax for corruption. It is not tax for your pocket. It is tax to bring services to Kenyans for them to see what is best for this country. I support, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honourable Member for North Imenti, Honourable Rahim Daud.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. From the outset, I support the Tax Procedures Amendment Bill. Madam Speaker, in supporting, I just want to clarify that this is not a taxation on any public, It is just the procedures which we are dealing with. Madam Speaker, I drew the attention of the Chair or Vice Chair of Finance. Section 2, Madam Speaker, where it says 2E, the time, date and time which the tax invoice was issued and the date and time which the supply was made, if it is different from the date of the tax invoice was issued. Madam Speaker, I have an issue with E, F, G, H. In that, Madam Speaker, this thing will be very difficult to implement in the sense that the ETRs, which already the business people have, they cannot be reconfigured for that. So that will mean that this, whatever is being proposed here, although it may be good, but it may be impossible to implement, Madam Speaker, because then reconfiguring all those ETRs, unless KRA will be buying new ETRs for all the business people, which I think would be very, very expensive. So these things, Madam Speaker, is unnecessary, it's time consuming, and I think that would be needing to change, and I've already spoken to the Vice Chair, Ambassador Benjamin, to look at that. Madam Speaker, the second one, in the same one, 3A, the addition, it says where prejudice to subsection 3, where supply is received from small businesses or small under 1 million, the purchaser would give an receipt to the one who is supplying. Madam Speaker, this is not possible. How, if I am going to go and buy from somebody in town who is doing a supply of less than 1,000, on that ETR, that provision is not there. So again, we have to buy a new ETR with all those features, which will be an impossibility. Not that it cannot be done, but the cost implication will be a lot on the taxpayers. So I will suggest to the committee to probably change that one. Madam Speaker, we go to number 4, which I think the clause 3, 37E2, it says where all the tax due as at 31st of December. That's a very noble thing, 31st December 2022. But Madam Speaker, this was put 2 years back. I would suggest to the committee, if it is possible, to put it to 31st December 2023 instead of 2022, because when it was done, it was very, very good, the way it was done, but I would propose an extra year. Madam Speaker, the same with 37E3, that is to change the dates to at least that one. On clause 4, Madam Speaker, 37F, it says it may be impossible to recover back taxes and all that, and sometimes it costs more to recover back taxes than when you have got difficulties where probably a business has fallen down and there is no possibility of recovering that money. Madam Speaker, we introduced an in duplum rule in the banking industry where loans, the interest element should not exceed the principal. I wish we could do the same in this clause 4 if it would mean introducing another clause or deleting one of the clauses there, but we should have an in duplum rule for all taxes, principal taxes payable. Madam Speaker, the other one, the good part of clause 4, 37.4, is saying where we need to gazette every 4 months, the Cabinet Secretary would have to gazette all the waivers given. Madam Speaker, we need to be careful in this country. There was a waiver given in 2015 or 2017 to one of the investors, but I just read a couple of days back in the Business Daily where the investor is being asked to pay off the debt. So, Madam Speaker, I'm seeing people, the majority leader is, I will just say the last 2 things if you don't mind. On clause 5, where it says 10% remitted on the interest on withholding, I agree with that, but I think the Finance Committee needs to clarify if this 10%, is it per month or until paid? with those few remarks, Madam Speaker, the overtax paid is very good, but we need to know how it is bound by years, by what time is it bound. So with those few remarks, I would like to thank you, Madam Speaker, and I will be bringing amendments to this. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for Kangundo, Honourable Fabian Muli, and let's make it brief because we have to rise at 12. And we need to give at least one more person a chance. Yes. Proceed, Honourable Member for Kangundo.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker, for giving the opportunity to earn my voice on tax formation laws. The tax formation starts from BC 5,000 years, Julius Caesar, so we are not doing something new, something which has happened century after century within different jurisdictions. Madam Speaker, on onset, I would like to support the work of committee, and I like to also support the bill with amendments. Madam Speaker, I don't understand where it's called tax procedure while we see talking about only sales. My proposal is for it to be called sales tax procedure. Although, Madam Speaker, as you say, there is no time, I try to be very speed, and I like also to add the voice on Section 23A, which it has given our Kenyans to be able to do the details of purchaser, the invoice will continue all the details. This now comes as a tax invoice, which work to high tax. For, I think, any invoice more than 5 million, it will serve very well because you'll be able to get all the details of the seller and purchaser. That's why I support that Section 23A. Madam Speaker, I go to Section 37E. Section 37E, it gives the attraction. This is the section which gives the attraction for the Commissioner of Revenue Tax to be able to attract many Kenyans to onboard on issues of tax, because when you give the tax amnesty, when you give more time, many people feel attracted to do their tax returns and to pay their money on time. Madam Speaker, not taking also more time, I go to Section 37F. This is where I'm giving some reservations. The taxman in this country is assessing the people's account for 5 years. Why do we give the taxman to assess somebody's account for 5 years? Within the 5 years, the Commissioner of Revenue Tax has been there. There have been a staff working in that department. Why do we assess people's tax? Within the principles of rule of natural justice, it is unfair to start calling people to submit their accounts for 5 years assessment of Commissioner of Revenue Tax. So this is where I'm feeling we need to give it like 2 or 3 years. Honorable Madam Speaker, also, you can see the penalties. Yeah, I know the time is not there, but I'll try to be very speed. The tax withholding. I don't understand why we are saying that somebody to hold tax. I'm trying to see Section 42, Section 42A. When you say you hold some money, why do you hold money? Why do we have to invoice? You have invoice to pay the supplier and the invoice for the money to be paid to the KRA direct. So why are we holding money? Why do we give some people right to hold the money we're supposed to be paid direct to KRA? So this is where I'm thinking the taxman should think further and bring details of the tax can be paid direct to his account and the supplier man to be paid direct to his account. Madam Speaker, I won't fail to add my voice on issues of income tax, even if it's not here. The income tax is the model for August Caesar, which is so hard, is not saving the economy of the country. Because when you assess somebody's account for 5 years for income tax, it's also giving more burden to the accountants, also giving brokers to be able to give injustice. Whatever the language you use, whether we raise the tax or we increase the tax, we need to embrace innovation. We make money for the country. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Kipkelion East, Honourable Cherorot.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm standing on order number 35. Given the mood of the House, Madam Speaker, and also the next order is also related to this order, Madam Speaker, and at 12 we are supposed to adjourn. Madam Speaker, I'm asking the mover to reply so that we can proceed.
Honorable members, I now put the question that the mover to reply. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Mover, you may reply.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And let me take this opportunity to thank all the members who have contributed. And I do believe tomorrow, Honorable Speaker, without anticipating debate, when we get to the Committee of the Whole, we will bear in mind some of the salient issues that members have raised, especially around the question of tax invoices and the amendments that are actually proposed, speaking to many of those issues by the committee. And with that, I beg to reply. Next order.
Yeah, honorable members, I will defer the putting of the question to later this afternoon. Next order.
Order number 11, the Business Laws Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 49 of 2024, second reading.
Majority Leader, you may move your bill.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the Business Laws Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 49 of 2024, be now read a second time. Honorable Speaker, allow me to first thank the chairs of the Trade and Industry Committee and the entire membership of that committee, the Committee on Finance and National Planning, because you remember, Honorable Speaker, when this bill was published, the Speaker did refer some of the provisions of this bill to the two committees, and the Committee on Trade and Industry considered all the provisions that touch on the Kenya Accreditation Service Act, the Scrap Metal Act, the Special Economic Zones Act, the Kenya Industrial Research and Development Institute, the National Electronic Single Window System Act, while the Committee on Finance and National Planning considered all the other provisions. And Honorable Speaker, you remember this is an omnibus bill. That's why we are calling it the Business Laws Amendment Bill, because it's amending quite a number of statutes. Top among the statutes being amended by this bill is the Banking Act, the Central Bank of Kenya Act, the Microfinance Act, the Standards Act, the Kenya Accreditation Service Act, the Scrap Metal Act. Although, Honorable Speaker, some of the provisions in the Scrap Metal Act I have written to the Speaker, and I'm sure he'll be making communication in that, withdrawing some of the provisions touching on the Scrap Metal Act, principally on the basis that we just legislated, and members, you remember, we just legislated the Miscellaneous Statutes bill about 2 weeks ago, and that bill is already in the Senate, and therefore the provisions that were in this Scrap Metal Act amendment are provisions that are similar to what we already legislated on. So to avoid duplication, I have written to the Speaker withdrawing on those provisions. So as members contribute, it's good to note that those provisions of the Scrap Metal Act, I do intend to withdraw them. There are also provisions of the Special Economic Zones and the Kenya Industrial Research and Development Institute in this bill. Honorable Speaker, going through the bill, members will note, and I'm trying to be quick, Honorable Speaker, you bear with me. On the Banking Act, on clause 2 of the bill seeks to introduce dissuasive penalties against institutions and credit reference bureaus that fail to comply with the provisions of the law and directions that are issued by the central bank, either through the prudential guidelines or other statutes that are established in law. Honorable Speaker, if you look at clause 3 of the bill, it puts a penalty that will not exceed 20 million shillings for people who contravene the provisions of the Act, the prudential guidelines of the central bank. And, Honorable Speaker, it also bears in mind, unlike before, there are places at times where people refuse deliberately to comply with the law because they are going to make a gain, or they will make a profit out of non-disclosure or out of non-compliance to the law. And we are therefore making it very punitive that if you do not comply, you either pay a penalty that is up to 20 million shillings, or 3 times the gross amount of the monetary gain made or loss avoided by failure or refusal to comply with whichever is higher, and 3 million shillings in the case of a corporate entity and 1 million shillings in the case of a natural person. This is to be, Honorable Speaker, if the penalty, the maximum penalty you pay is 20 million shillings or the higher of 3 times the gain or loss that you avoided. Because non-compliance with financial institutions is usually because they want either to avoid making a loss or they want to make more money. So if you make 100 million shillings profit, or you avoided, you refuse to comply so that you avoid making a loss of 50 million shillings, you will end up paying a penalty of 3 times the loss you incurred. You avoided, that will be 150 million, notwithstanding the maximum penalty of 20 million, or 300 million if what you wanted was a gain of 100 million. Honorable Speaker, the clause 3 speaks to the provisions that were to increase the minimum core capital for banks, mortgage finance companies. And Honorable Speaker, if you look at all the banks we have in the country, the provision is to move the core capital to at least 10 billion shillings. 3D says a core capital of at least 10 billion shillings in the case of a bank or a mortgage finance company. Honorable Speaker, this might sound very big, but it's in line with the Basel Committee on Banking, Supervision and Financial Action Task Force, and Honorable Speaker, and also the Basel III framework on capital adequacy requirement. And this will encourage banks to even merge, and we have bigger banks that have a larger core capital, and therefore banks that will be able to assure Kenyans that they will never ever lose their deposits because they are very well capitalized, instead of having banks that are not well capitalized, that cannot lend. And when there are small shocks in the economy or in the banking sector, then these banks tend to collapse. And you remember in the last few years, Honorable Speaker, before 2020, between 2015 and 2018, we had at least 2 or 3 banks collapsing in this country. Remember the one that was called Mwalimu something, the one teachers had tried to buy through Mwalimu Sacco. There was Chase Bank that collapsed. There was Imperial Bank that collapsed. And to avoid this situation, Honorable Speaker, you encourage banks, those that don't have adequacy in capital, to merge and form bigger banks, which will be a good thing to also create a competitive sector in the banking industry, so that even interest rates that they offer to us, banks that are well capitalized, are able to offer us better credit facilities. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, even looking at the banks already, what we have done, Honorable Speaker, and members who will have interacted with the report of the Planning and Finance Committee, where Honorable Samuel Atandi sits in, and is a former banker, he will tell you, even a bank like National Bank, where Honorable Atandi used to work, was on the verge of collapsing. Basically out of capital inadequacy, mismanagement, and theft, outright theft in National Bank. There was outright theft of public resources. And therefore, when you encourage banks to merge, Honorable Speaker, or to have bigger capital, they will more likely be able to survive the tides of the times than when they are less capitalized. Looking at the banks, Honorable Speaker, and I was saying for those who have interacted with this report, they will be able to see the Committee on National Finance and National Planning has indicated that they will be moving amendments to the provisions that are here to give a timeline of at least 7 years, so that this capital adequacy is not increased immediately, so that it doesn't become a shocker to the industry. But they have proposed amendments to give them 7 years. And I'm told the first 3 years, at least banks should be able to move to at least 5 billion shillings. And I was just looking at the statistics. It's only 6 banks in the country that are below the capital threshold of 5 billion shillings. So it's only those 6 banks that you require within the next 3 years, not immediately. And I think it's important to note that, because I had seen a lot of talk on social media, oh, they want to close banks, they want to force banks to merge, and all that kind of talk. But we are saying within a period of 3 years, those 6 banks that are below 5 billion have 3 years then to transition and increase their core capital to 5 billion shillings. We have another 18 banks that are between 5 and 9 billion shillings, and they also have those 3 years to move towards 10 billion. Then another 24 banks are on the verge of 10 billion and above, 24 banks in the industry. So, Honorable Speaker, you are looking at about another 24 that you need to move up. And we are giving them 3 years, first 3 years to move to 5 billion, another 2 years to move to at least 8 billion shillings, and the last 2 years for everybody now to be on 10 billion shillings core capital. And that tells you, Honorable Speaker, they will have adequate time to be able to mobilize resources. I have seen some have already begun that. I have seen a rights issue by Housing Finance, that was a mortgage finance company, and now is also involved in retail business for banking. Honorable Speaker, other provisions that I could speak to quickly on clause 3 is still touching on the adequacy, capital adequacy of the banks. And also, Honorable Speaker, the amendments to the Central Bank of Kenya Act, Cap 491, the bill seeks to amend various provisions of the Central Bank of Kenya Act to allow the Central Bank to regulate all forms of non-deposit taking credit business. Honorable Speaker, if you look at the current Act, Part VIC of the Central Bank of Kenya Act.
Majority Leader, I hope you're aware that we are rising at 12.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to move quickly, Honorable Speaker. It regulates digital credit business. And the definition of digital credit business, Honorable Speaker, creates the impression that the Central Bank is only regulating those who are lending money either on the internet, on mobile, or on computer devices. And therefore, going by this interpretation of the Act, it does not cover all forms of credit, including those who, the schemes of buying, you buy now, pay later, then the people like peer-to-peer lenders, Honorable Speaker, and especially this thing of buy now and pay later, Honorable Speaker. Border riders have been the biggest victims of these schemes, Honorable Speaker. You find a border rider or prospective border owners getting credit for 120,000 shillings to buy a border, and they pay this border probably 4 or 5 times. And at the end of the day, the border is repossessed by these credit lenders. And we therefore want to bring to the ambit of the regulation of CBK all these lenders, whether you are lending digitally or by mobile or online, but if you are even on these hire purchase schemes, whether it's border, whether it's for cooking gas, our women, our mama bogas have also suffered immensely under these lenders. They buy cooking gas and cooking gas cylinders and cookers, and within 2-3 months, after paying immensely, probably 3-4 times what you borrowed, you are forced to take back what you own because these people are not regulated. Honorable Speaker, other provisions touch on the credit reference bureaus, and in the interest of time, Honorable Speaker, I do not want to get into all that. And also the Microfinance Act, Honorable Speaker, as I said, on the things that were being done by the Trade and Industry Committee under the chairmanship of Honorable Gakuya. As I've indicated, we will be moving to drop some of the amendments relating to the Scrap Metal Act, but there are provisions of the Kenya Industrial Research and Development Institute that establishes the KIRDI, or the Kenya Industrial Research and Development Institute, which is responsible to undertake research and development in industrial and allied technologies. And clause 37 of the bill seeks to provide that the institute may acquire or dispose patent rights which may be necessary for the institute to achieve its objectives, Honorable Speaker. There are also provisions, Honorable Speaker, as I mentioned, in the National Electronic Single System Act under clause 38 of the bill, which seeks to amend the National Electronic Single Window System Act to give powers to the Cabinet Secretary to exempt certain category of users of the National Electronic Single Window System from payment of prescribed fees, Honorable Speaker. And exempting payment of fees removes the potential financial barrier for businesses, especially small and medium enterprises. And I must thank the committee because if you read and interact with their report, you see we're very much in support of these provisions because it creates, as I said, the potential to remove financial barriers that stop SMEs from growing in this country. And therefore, some may be exempted from these prescribed fees under these amendments. And this will lead to higher adoption rate of the system by industry and by SMEs. Honorable Speaker, let me not go beyond that in the interest of time. I believe members will have more time in the afternoon to be able to interact with this bill and request the chair of the Finance, Trade and Industry Committee, the Honorable Gakuya, aka Bazenga. Trade and Industry, the Honorable Gakuya, aka Bazenga, to second, and I beg to move.
Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, I beg to second that the Business Law Amendments Bill 2024 is an omnibus bill sponsored by the leader of the majority party, the Hon. Kimani Ichung'wah, pursuant to the provisions of Articles 118 and Standing Order 127 of the National Assembly, Standing Orders, the clerk through advertisement in the local daily newspaper on Thursday, November 14th, 2024, invited the public and stakeholders to submit memorandums of the bill to be received by Thursday, 28th November 2025 at 5 p.m. The bill was thus being committed to the relevant departmental committee on to facilitate public participation. Madam Speaker, the bill contains amendments to various business-related statutes, 6 of which fall under the purview of the mandate of the Departmental Committee on Trade, Industry and Cooperatives. The committee has received and reviewed many written memorandums submitted and also conducted public hearing from Monday 25th November 2022 to Wednesday 27th November 2024 at the main chamber County Hall. Madam Speaker, the bill also attains the following Act of Parliament which are related to the committee: the National Electoral Single Window System Act Cap 2021. The bill proposes to grant the Cabinet Secretary the powers to exempt a certain category of users of